G'day ladies and gents. Today we're going to have a little bit of a chat about the trusty CBR250RR. So this particular bike, the 250RR, has about, when it was stock 20 years ago, about 45 horsepower. Which isn't a hell of a lot really, but it's a really great bike, and yeah, it's a great bike for learning on. It's fun around town. It's quite unique in that it's a 4-cylinder bike. Many of the 250cc, well in fact pretty much most of the 250cc's nowadays are singles or twins. This is quite unique in that it was a 4-cylinder bike, so it actually sounds quite good, and it revs to a stupid, I think it's 18,500 RPM before red line kicks in, so it's got a pretty serious motor that likes to rev, and that makes it quite an interesting bike on the road. Under 8,000 RPM it is a little bit useless. Above 8,000 RPM is where it starts to get fun. So above 8,000 RPM it pulls quite well. First, second and third are fantastic. Once you sort of get it fourth and fifth, it doesn't quite have the kick, so it's not the most amazing thing if you're riding on motorways, freeways, doing over say 120, 130 k's an hour. It definitely, I wouldn't say it struggles, but yeah, it's not as enjoyable at that kind of speed. Mainly because it is still quite light and it does get buffeted by side winds, but also at the same time because the motor sits at quite a high rev, and because it's not exactly a quiet bike, as you can probably tell, it does get a bit irritating even with earplugs. So if you were looking for a lamb's bike and you were going to be doing a lot of freeway, motorway commuting, probably wouldn't suggest this bike. Just for that reason alone, it's a definite limitation, and I know it would annoy me considerably if that was the case. But other than that, I mean, if you're just running around town, not really traveling over that speed for any extended period of time, this bike is perfect. It's like I said, it's fantastic. Over 8,000 RPM, it actually pulls really nicely, from 8,000 through to 18,500, and it sounds just incredible. That's probably the single most best thing about the bike is the sound that it makes at high revs. I was riding with a mate, also a motor vlogger, the other day, and he was saying that it was like riding with a Formula 1 car behind you, because it literally makes that much noise. But yeah, like I say, that's definitely a selling point. I know, let's face it, we're all motivated by sound, and this bike in particular just sounds absolutely amazing. It's just it really is a bike that can do it all. Again, when you compare it to the current crop of motorbikes, certainly 250s, 300s, and even up into the 600s, this bike is still extremely well appointed. It was back when they obviously used to do a little bit of production race in this class. So the bike has Nissan twin front discs with twin calipers, and it stops extremely quickly for a little. I mean, it's quite light, but the braking performance on this is really quite exceptional. You compare that again with the majority of your, Ninja 300s and the new CBR 300 and the Yamaha R3. In fact, I can't confirm the Yamaha 3 because I'm not too sure. I don't know if that's got twin discs. I'm sure someone will tell me. But yeah, look, this bike stops very quickly. It's got fantastic brakes for the size, and even though it's a 20-year-old motorbike, it just shows you how well built this bike was. Also has adjustable, has an adjustable rear shock. So I mean, it's not quite race adjustable, but you can certainly adjust how hard the bike is. Especially if you're a heavier rider, you might want to tweak it a little bit higher, because I don't think it was built for extremely heavy people. But it's fine for me, being you know, I think I'm about 75 kilos. I'm not sure what that is in pounds for anyone else who works in that strange imperial stuff. But yeah, so that's, I mean, a basic overview of the bike. I'm going to pull up a little bit in a little bit of time and just do a quick walk around and just show you the bike. I do apologize, my particular bike is probably cosmetically not the most amazing. 20 years old, it looks like it's been dropped about 3 times. I haven't dropped it, but certainly a couple of people before me have. The engine though is sweet as a motherfucker. This thing still revs and runs. Oh, it's perfect. It really is. It idles nicely for a carburetor motor, which sometimes they're known to be a bit finicky. This particular bike is just absolutely perfect. It really is. Hasn't skipped a beat since the day I owned it. And it's ticking along 70,300 kilometers, so certainly it's done a few Ks over the years. So yeah, look, it's fantastic, and still very relevant even in 2017. Still a very relevant bike. I've seen a lot of people on forums say that they still love this bike, and even though they might be riding a liter bike or a 600 sports bike nowadays, that they miss the exhilaration of being able to have a bike like this and be able to really wring its neck without going to jail. So that, I guess that's another pro for this bike, is that you can really give it a handful and still stay within legal limits to a point, as long as you're not riding a 60 zone or something, because it'll pick up pretty quick. But you know, certainly for the most part, you can give it a good old crack of the throttle, and without it getting out of hand and you getting jail time. So yeah, that's definitely a pro on its side. Fuel economy wise, the bike has, I think, a 13-litre fuel tank, and I get, depending on how I ride, somewhere between 220 and 250 kilometers. I tend to err on the lower side with estimations, just because I like to give it a bit of throttle sometimes, and I have run out of fuel once already. So estimate and allow for about 220, 230 Ks. That's when I know I generally need to fill up. So it gives you a pretty good guide. I think that's around about yeah, 6.5 litres per 100 kilometers, which, you know, is pretty good. Again, for a 20-year-old bike, I think that's pretty reasonable. I don't know, I think some of the more modern fuel-injected bikes might be a little bit better there. But again, it really depends how you ride a bike, as to how much fuel you're going to be consuming. Some will be slightly better than others by default, but yeah, I mean, if you're heavy on the throttle, you're definitely going to be using more fuel. So yeah, definitely that's worth taking into account. Cost of ownership, certainly in Australia, insurance. I'm a little bit older, I'm in my 30s, so cost of insurance is pretty reasonable for me. I don't pay any more than 150 bucks a year. It's pretty small. As you can hear, sounds amazing at high revs. It really does sound amazing. Left my indicator on, bit of a retard, but yeah, it's a pretty spiffy bike. You could pick these bikes up in Australia for anywhere between say $1,800 and $3,000 for a particularly good example. I guess things to look out for. I would be particularly worried if you find a bike with very low kilometers. Given the bike's age, it means it's probably been stuck in a garage and not really ridden, and you're probably going to find that you're going to have some issues based on that, and you know, you might find that things fall apart or it doesn't work so well. Another thing, as I mentioned before, is being a carburetor motor, the carbs can sometimes, especially on an older bike, go out of sync. When that happens, you obviously need to seek out a mechanic that can do a carb sync for you, unless you know how to do that yourself. In fact, there's a pretty good community on Facebook, and that's the CBR250RR Facebook group. There's also a 250RR WA Facebook group, and they're particularly helpful. Lots of guys with lots of experience with the bike, and they can help you out. There's a few I would say prison tricks, but basically a few bush mechanic tricks on syncing the carburetors with I think plastic bottles with water in them to, I don't know, it's all, obviously syncing the carbs is based on pressure, so I've got some idea how that works, but essentially that's what they do if you don't have a carb syncing tool or you don't want to take it to mechanics. So it can be done, but it's certainly, I wouldn't say it's a kind of thing for beginners. Anyway, I'm gonna pull up in a sec and give you a quick walk around of the bike, and then we'll carry on up the road. CBR250RR. As I mentioned before, Nissan calipers, twin calipers at the front, twin discs. You know, for such a light bike, the braking performance is exceptional. Again, 20 years old, and still an upside down fork. So you know, a lot again, modern pseudo beginner sports bikes don't have this technology that's been on bikes for 20 years. Unlike some of the modern bikes where they have single light with both high and low, this particular bike has high and low in both bulbs. So basically when you turn the headlights on, you'll see that both light up, and then when you put the high beams on, both go to high beam. So slightly different to maybe some of the more modern sports bikes or modern bikes in general. Look, positioning wise, compared to your you know, your CBR 300, Ninja 300 and the like, and even your CBR 500, this is definitely going to be a slightly more aggressive position on the bike, more akin to a sports bike. Probably not as aggressive as, say, a 600, but certainly more aggressive than the sort of pseudo modern beginner sports bikes. This particular bike has a Yoshi exhaust. Technically, I don't think any modification from standard basically means it's no longer part of Lambs, but as a general rule, I mean, I've not had any problems. I've been pulled over before. The cops are pretty lenient, and that gives it the bike a absolutely fantastic sound. As I mentioned before, the rear shock does have some adjustment. I don't know if you can see in there, but basically has 6 or 7. It's a Showa shock, by the way, which is again pretty impressive for an older bike, 20 years old. That's, you know, adjustable in terms of stiffness. I don't know all the technical jargon, but you get the picture. As you can see, it's rough guts on this side. It's been dropped a few times, so you can see it's been bogged up a bit. But look, other than that, the bike's engine wise and mechanically is just absolutely fantastic. It really is. It's just amazing. Yeah, and other than that, that's pretty much it, really. It's a great little bike. Still fantastic in today's market. And you know, if you're out there looking for a new bike, or even if you've got a bike and you kind of want to reinvigorate things because you can't get ham-fisted with your leader bike anymore without breaking the law, it's a really good bike to buy. And sorry about that, I was just having a chat with the guys asking me about the bike. Yeah, so still relevant, still a great bike. Recommend to anyone. If you're in Australia, they're, you know, pretty fucking cheap. Certainly much cheaper than going out and buying a brand new Lambs bike. Like I say, you do run the gamble of maybe having some issues with reliability, but mine in particular has been bulletproof, and it's just fucking fantastic. So anyway, that's me. If you like what I've made, subscribe. I've got a couple of things in the works which might be interesting that'll be running along with the channel. So yeah, hoping to grow the base, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Cheers.